April the 6th.
5 p.m. This is a notice of a special meeting of the Bardstown City Council. Welcome everyone, and looks like we got a full house again. So anyway, the second item on the agenda will be the Wickland Boone Sewer Extension, the change order number 2. And Jessica, could you explain the change order and why and how we got to that point?
Yes, I can. In the original contract, there were a couple of different point repairs to be included in that line as a lump sum. We had invert elevations and other plans that showed that there should have been plenty of falls. We did have TV footage, camera footage of that segment of line that showed, that helped us kind of determine which segments we thought needed to be replaced because the camera went underwater. Really, that's about all you can tell when you are underwater. You don't always know why, but we knew that something was going on and something needed to be done there. When the contractor started at the farthest downstream repair, everything went fine. They went up to the next repair segment, and as they started repairing that section of line and replacing that footage, they went to tie back into the existing line and found that the sewer line itself was not at a positive grade. It was actually running backward. So that left a condition that we could not have prepared for, could not have known about, and therefore we then asked the contractor to just fill the trench back in while we kind of decided what we were going to do. So we then excavated another couple of points downstream or upstream from the line to determine if positive grade could be obtained and determine where. We found that yes, we could relay that section of sewer line to get positive drainage through that gravity line. Again, the original plan showed a positive grade of 1%. Just something that we could not have predicted until we actually dug it up. It was in the middle of the road. Come to find out, it was laying on bedrock. So that's probably what resulted in the initial contractor probably hit rock. And instead of hammering out additional rock at the time in the initial construction, they just went with it. And even during the course of the time this project's been bid, we have had to go out and rot it out. One of the reasons it's on our repair list, because it does give us constant fits, and the negative slope does create constant maintenance problems for us. So it's an area that we do need to resolve. It's something we knew we needed to fix and address and plan to. It's just our problem was something we could not have predicted. So this change order is to try to get that resolved while we have the street already cut and excavated, and get these guys in here to take care of that for us. Any other questions?
I got one. Is this something we could do ourselves?
Well, the reason we probably could do it ourselves, but we'd have to rent 2 separate pieces of equipment and trench boxing. Plus, we also have additional construction projects going on that we're in the middle of. We don't really have the time or the equipment to go over there and do that work. So we would like to, while these guys actually have the equipment and the ability to do it, they were already here doing this segment of work, that they can go in and do that. We just don't really have the right equipment and men to do the job at this time. And again, the road really needs to be put back, and I don't really want to put the road back without having fixed it.
So the work has to be done.
It has to be.
Clearly, it has to be done.
Regardless of who's doing it, we really need to get it done.
It's technically a change order, but it's really a new scope of work. I mean, it's
Right.
a new,
It was a scope we couldn't predict.
and you can technically bid it, rebid it and all that, but the time to do that and all, the contractor's there, you had a good price from him to begin with. Jessica had talked to me about this earlier. I mean, to me, it has to be done, and the contractor's there. You can't have a sewer line going uphill.
Right. It
That just
work.
doesn't work. So I see no alternative but to do it.
If you don't, you guys, if you don't do this, by the time this company moves out, then you have another company move in, you know, some companies charge what's called
You gotta
charge
remove the
setup,
mobilization fees and all those things.
setup charge,
Just a
and
small scope of work.
it's just, it's one of those, it's a necessary evil. It's gotta be done.
So Mayor, it'll cost us more in the long run if we don't go ahead.
I think it will.
And timing is also important, you know, the more readily we can go ahead and get this work taken care of, I think the better off we are, rather than having additional backups that occur within the community.
And this pipe was put in the early 70s,
1973.
1973, and there's just, you know, there's a large scope of work that has to be done throughout the city, and this is part of it, and I know Ben's doing a lot.
Right, I think we've kind of got enough in-house projects going on right now, and some industrial projects that we're wanting to get started on. And I'd like to continue forward with the direction we already have implemented for our internal guys. And if we had all the equipment we needed, we'd probably be looking at it a little differently, but we don't, we would have to rent.
What kind of equipment we don't have?
It would require a larger excavator than what we have, and it would require a hoe ram, a larger hoe ram machine than what we have. This line is deeper, it's about 8 feet deep. Plus we would have to get larger trench boxes than what ours would need to do in that pavement section.
I don't disagree with what you said, Fred, or you either, John, but we need to start looking at some of these projects, see if we can't do them ourselves, if we need more
We do a
equipment.
lot, we do a lot.
Excuse me, Mr. Simpson.
We-
We can't talk about that.
Well,
Mr. Simpson, I'm sorry, we can't talk about that.
What's that?
Unfortunately, we can't talk about future needs at this meeting. I'm sorry.
like future needs for equipment, we can't discuss that,
Sorry.
because we're in a special meeting.
Are there any other questions that you have regarding this particular change order? If there are not, I would like to ask the council to recommend approval of change order number 2 for the Wickland Boone Sewer Main Extension Project.
So moved. I'll second the motion to approve the Wickland Boone Sewer Extension Change Order Number 2.
I have a clarification of the amount.
Yes, the amount is $36,300.
Thank you.
The motion is to approve the Wickland Boone Sewer Extension Change Order Number 2 for the amount of $36,300 for the change order. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? One opposed? Ayes have it. Motion is adopted for change order, $36,300. Thank you. Going to number 3, Councilman Hagan, I'll let you have the floor,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Councilwoman Copeland for switching chairs with me, because I had to complete this map. The main purpose of tonight's discussion is for the council to understand our annexation options. This hasn't been talked about in the full council yet, and to review the economic analysis of the first area. I'll be using this map as we go along and go through the explanation. Each councilman has a individual drawing of each of these annexation areas, so it'll be a little easier for you to follow along. As part of this explanation, I think it would be beneficial, especially for the public, for us to walk through the timeline to see how we got where we are today. Most of the council is aware of this, but I think it would be just good to kind of recap it. After becoming the chairman of the Annexation Committee early this year, I met with Larry Green to understand what our annexation options are. We have several fingers of land inside the overall boundary of the city that are not part of the city. Particularly, here's one right here. It comes in off of, that's off of the bypass. We've got this Barton Lake finger here. We have this Withrow Court area, which we'll talk about later, and some other areas. So we wanted to, so I thought as part of our annexation committee that we would look at ways to consider to eliminate these areas and to kind of round out the border of the city. That's one of the main purposes of annexation, so I thought it was a good time for us to look at it. I thought it was important for the council to understand what the annexations are and for us to make a public decision regarding those options. The only alternative to that line of reasoning was for the council to continue to, in all fairness, be ignorant of this topic and to make no decision. That's been the case for the last 10 years since the hospital annexation through 5 city councils, of which I was part. And to me, that's just not acceptable. I think we need to understand our options and to discuss them and then make a decision. So I called a meeting of the Annexation Committee, which we met on February 28th. From the minutes of that meeting, I stated that I opened the discussion by stating that the purpose of the meeting was for the Annexation Committee, especially the councilmen, to understand that what our options are for annexation. The purpose was not to make decisions or even recommendations to the full council. During that, the mayor made a comment. He wants to close the lines up, that we have no empty hose. The primary goal of annexation is to control the growth of our community. And then we made some general comments about, we recommended, we wanted everyone to grasp the understanding of each area, the numbers as we mix and match everything. Councilman Simpson wanted to make sure we looked at the whole picture: sewer, water lines, public works, amount of trucks, workers, street lighting, police officers, etc. At my request, each councilman received a copy of the map, and we agreed we would work on one area at a time. We brought those minutes back to the full council. We reviewed those, and as part of that first meeting, here are the areas that we identified, and I just kind of want to go over them right now. And council, these maps are in an order of the way we're going to look at them. The first area we looked at is this Withrow Court area. In my way of thinking, this is where the whole process starts. This is where the whole discussion starts, because we have an agreement with Jim Beam that this area cannot be annexed until all the other warehouses in the Bardstown area are annexed. That was an agreement that was signed in the year 2000. You have a copy of it there. And that's something that, as the city grows out 245, as it is growing, the hospital, the Thomas Nelson, Cottage, Middle Springs, this is eventually going to be something we're going to have to deal with. So, because there is only one way to annex that area, which is to annex the other whiskey warehouses. We looked at the other areas that are part of a possible annexation. Again, this is not to imply we should, it's to imply this is what is available. This is what we have the responsibility to make a decision on. The next area we looked at is the Maywood area, and that is coupled with the Heaven Hill warehouses. That's on 49. And this goes back to this area on Withrow Court. In order to annex these warehouses, we have to annex the other warehouses first. In order to annex those warehouses, since they're an industrial area, the only way to annex an industrial area, if that area does not wish to be annexed, is to couple it with a residential area, and the ratio will be 2 to 1. You have to have 2 workers for 1 residence. That is if the area does not wish to be annexed. It's worth pointing out 4 or 5 years ago, there was a large area where the rock quarry is, the Heaven Hill warehouses on Bloomfield Road, the cinemas, a lot of that was annexed by the agreement of those property owners. So that does happen just on its own. In order to tie these 2 areas together, they have to be annexed together. They have to be contiguous. So in order to use the Maywood subdivision and couple it with the Heaven Hill warehouse, it would require annexing a strip of land, a 10 to 20 foot strip of land all along this area between these 2 pieces of property, and would probably include the area behind McDonald's. That's McDonald Lane. That line could be drawn several different ways, but that is the reason those 2 are coupled together. That is a legal way of doing it. It's somewhat gerrymandered, but it's done. That's what the Kentucky State Legislature allows. That is a possibility. The other area that's a possibility is out of Sutherland Lane. I don't know what this neighborhood's called. It's Hudson Drive, Delaware Court. I'm sorry? Bridgepoint. That subdivision, which is, you can see the city property goes, the city lines, the shaded area is the city. Bridgepoint, again, if we keep the concept of we have, in order to annex the Withrow Court area, we have to annex the Barton warehouses. The same possibility exists to take Bridgepoint and couple it with a small strip of land all around the city over to this area here, and then essentially make the city lines go that way. That is a possibility. Then we have the Withrow Court area, which is the Jim Beam warehouses. The final area that's a possibility is this, you see this island or this finger of land that comes in? This is a Chris's creation right here, just to give you an idea of where that is. That's an area that, again, when you're trying to clean up your borders, it would be nice to not have that finger come in here. And once we start that process, there's all kinds of possibilities of neighborhoods out here, going out to Woodlawn, even out to American Greetings, which isn't on this map. Some of these subdivisions have signed annexation agreements, some have not. Again, that would have to be coupled. You'd have to take the people who have signed annexation agreements, couple them with the people who hadn't. There's a form that would have to be worked out there. We haven't really studied that, but that is one of the areas that was identified. If you envision those areas, it would clean the border up, make it more of a uniform, and it would, I think, take care of what's going to be a problem down the road, which is this area right here. So, any questions on any of that?
I know you haven't finished the analysis yet. You know for sure how many property owners that do not have sewer because Bardstown do not offer sewer to, if we annex this piece of property and if someone don't have sewer, we do not offer this sewer because city have a policy, or honest, it is mandated, they have to connect to the city sewer. So the question I was asking, how many property owners which you indicated that do not have city sewer?
I have no idea. Okay, so those were the areas that were identified in the first meeting. And then as part of that, we just said we would look at one meeting at a time, or one of these areas at a time. So our second meeting was on March 18th, and basically in that, from those minutes, we said looking at annexation from a legal standpoint and taxes, Councilman Chairman Hagan stated we all need to understand how the process works. We made a recommendation that we, at the Annexation Committee, present the economic analysis to the council of the proposed annexation area, which was this first area, which is the Maywood subdivision, Heaven Hill warehouses on Gilpin Run, McDonald Avenue, Barton Lake, and the required strip of land on nearby properties needed to tie together these individual properties. So that was from our second meeting. We read that, we brought that back to the council. There was some discussion on that. Councilwoman Copeland wanted to make sure she wanted to ask how long the analysis would take. Councilman Lydian wanted to make sure we did a full economic analysis of Maywood, including the garbage pickup issue, so we talked about that a little bit. So we moved on to the next part of that, which is the economic analysis that we spoke of. As Francis suggested, that Maywood's going to take a while, and that is still being developed. So I know the mayor's staff is working on that, the roads, so forth and so on. The economic impact of annexing Heaven Hill properties at the current property tax rate, we do have that. That would be an additional tax bill to Heaven Hill of over $100,000. I don't know exactly what that would be because we don't know what the value of the whiskey is. Now that we've done that, to my mind, that's clearly not feasible. That's clearly out of line. Heaven Hill is already the largest property taxpayer in the city of Bardstown by far. Its employees pay occupational tax. And I've always think my mantra is we should do what's best for the citizens of Bardstown. And Heaven Hill is a citizen of Bardstown, a very good citizen of Bardstown. And all 13,000 citizens of Bardstown benefit from the presence of Heaven Hill in Bardstown due to the inflow of tourism, occupational tax, and so forth. So I want to do what's best for all of those citizens. So given that, in my mind, the main reason we're going down this road, again, I go back to this Withrow Court area, was for cleaning up our borders. As the committee chairman, I searched for possible ways to bring the Heaven Hill property into the city without a huge economic impact. And in short, we could find no reasonable way to do that. It's not possible to annex a property and suspend the personal property tax. The mayor's staff checked on that. You can't do that. It's not legal. With the mayor's staff help, we looked at the possibility of adjusting the personal property tax rate to lower the overall rate for all taxpayers to achieve even a neutral tax increase. That would still put a pretty heavy burden, a pretty large tax burden on Heaven Hill. So after exhausting these possibilities, I think it's not feasible to include the Heaven Hill property in the first annexation area. And I suggest that we continue the study focusing on the Maywood area only. And I make that recommendation with the understanding that the city council, some 20 years down the road, is going to have to deal with that withdrawal court issue. When the contract was signed in 2000, the hospital wasn't there, the Thomas Nelson wasn't there, none of that was annexed out that way. That is starting to grow that way, and one of these days somebody's going to have to deal with that, but there it is. I don't think there's any way that we can do that. If we don't consider the annexation of Heaven Hill property, it's unreasonable that we would not consider the Barton properties on our next phase, because they just wouldn't make any sense. So again, my opinion is that after studying this and understanding that we would, during this first phase of this annexation study, that we not include the Heaven Hill properties in that. I'm done.
I'm gonna go to number 5, and first I'd like to say, I think it takes a lot of guts that Councilman Hagan, Councilman Simpson, and Councilman Button, as an annexation committee. I think they, to look at it, this is what their job is as annexation committee. That is, and that's what it's been since this administration has started, is to get the committees to work and do their jobs. And I think they've done their jobs, and it shows. But I would like to make the recommendation that the annexation committee go back and reconsider the annexation of the distilleries, of not, just like what you just proposed there, of not to annex them into the city at this time, and go back to the board and look at other areas. That's what I would ask the annexation committee to do. Yes.
I agree with that statement and that position on annexations of the distilleries.
Do we need a motion?
Go ahead, Frank.
I'll read
I don't
them.
need a motion. I don't need a motion.
Okay.
My statement was I'm asking for the annexation committee to reconsider not annexing the distilleries. That's what my recommendation is. It doesn't take a motion. But we'll go to number 6, and it's council to
I
discussion.
have a question, it's related to this. So this issue is not taken care of at the present time, right? I mean, you said, say that again, what you said.
When the annexation committee meets again, what I'm asking the annexation committee to do is, when they consider annexing any properties, do not consider the distilleries at this time. Do not consider the distilleries.
This is a special meeting, and we can vote. I think we need to put this to rest. That's my opinion. I mean, this special meeting, I have the right to speak related to this. In my opinion, I think we should vote and put it to rest. Because if you don't put it to rest, if you make a farm and you cannot put it out.
I don't think there was ever a motion on the floor to annex. It never gotten that far. There's not even a motion on the floor to annex. So
I would like to put a motion on the floor not to discuss it.
Yeah, I think that what has to happen here is that you've got an annexation committee whose job
Right.
is to bring forward
Sure.
certain
I know.
proposals. I think what the chairman has done is said, here's some of the things we're considering. The mayor has said, go back and when in considerations, don't consider those. And so that when their considerations, when their proposals come forward, and I guess in theory, the committee could disagree and still bring forward a proposal to annex the distillery or warehouse. But what he's asking is the committee to reconsider those areas and not to include, and Mayor, feel free to disagree with whatever I'm saying here, but I think what he's asking is the annexation committee to come forward with a proposal that does not include that. All you've got right now is a report from the annexation committee that's saying, here's some of the things that we're considering. I don't think that the council can, I think that with the committee structure, what you have to do is you have to wait for the committee to come forward with a proposal to act on that proposal. I suppose at a future meeting under a new business item, you could make a motion, or you could bring up the concept of we won't consider annexation of the distilleries or the warehouses, but I don't think it's appropriate to do it now. It's not really on the agenda. You're looking at the committee and the committee's report to their progress to date.
And I think the proper way to do that, Mr. Bellmer, correct me, is you have to have a motion on the floor to vote. If there was a motion on the floor to annex the distilleries, then you could vote against it. But right now, this was just a committee report. That's all it was. And my recommendation is sent back to the committee chairman for him to consider that. And I think we're all in agreement. So I just, as far as having a vote, you're not voting on anything. It doesn't call for a vote.
But I think that the next item is discussion of future annexations. I think you can make your wishes known.
Right.
I think that, I assume that is there to give input to the annexation committee about what your all's wishes are. Now, I don't think you should, it says discussion, it doesn't say anything about voting.
We're not to vote, it's a discussion, and that's number 6, which when we get to that, that's where I was heading, that's where we are to discuss it. And you can discuss your opinion on the annexation, or you can give it to the Councilman Hagan, which is the chair. So can we move forward to number 6? Oh, I'm sorry,
I agree with everything you said, Mayor, about taking it back to the committee. Let the committee look at it with the recommendations that Fred has stated also.
Right. And that's where I really want to get this council back is that's what we have committees for, and those committees are to be utilized. And our annexation committee met how many years ago? 10? 10 years ago was the last time. And that's what I'm getting back to is these committees and you guys that are on these committees to utilize those committees into your benefit. So can we move to number 6? All right, let's move to number 6. That now we can have the council discussion for future annexation. The floor is open for discussion. Yes, Councilman Copeland.
I have a question. So you're recommending that the distilleries are not part of the annexation, but as you stated, you're still thinking about Maywood?
Yes. That's still a recommendation.
Larry, how long before we get an analysis? How long? You stated the last meeting that we would have it in about 2 weeks, and so how much longer will it be before we receive something?
Some of that depends on identifying what it is we're studying, because we're just now changing things around, so we have a better idea if we're not studying the warehouses and Bardstown Road and Maywood, then that narrows it down, makes it a little easier, and a lot of that is being done by the engineering staff. So I'm going to refer to them on the time.
If I can interject, Councilman Copeland, is that the annexation committee, there were originally, Councilman Hagan, I think, if I'm wrong, there was initially 4 different areas, correct? So I think that part has to go back to the committee to decide what area that they want to do next. To say that you want to study on Maywood, it might not be Maywood, it could be another section. So the committee has to decide where they want to go with the annexation, and then that study will be given to the engineers and to my staff. And once they have that, then we'll give it back to you.
And I understand that, But as many of you know, we've received many emails and a lot of telephone calls. And I think I missed one email because it went to spam. But I answered every last one of them. My very last email came from Maywood Homeowners Association. So that's why I'm asking about Maywood. Clearly, we're not saying that, you're not recommending that Maywood be taken off the table. So that's why I asked you, Fred, where were you with Maywood? And then that's why I asked Larry about the analysis, because we were already working on the analysis, but I know it's gonna change, but it seemed like it would be easier now since you don't have the distilleries in there.
It will be.
It will be. but
And
the committee
Maywood is
hasn't
not-
decided which area to annex. That's the committee's decision is to, you're wanting to throw Maywood out there, and it could be any other two
Right.
other spots.
I understand that we have 4 quadrants. So what I'm saying is Maywood still is in that spectrum, right?
I would agree.
Okay.
May I ask a question, Mayor? I mean, it says council discussion for future annexation. So you want council member opinion for future annexation? I mean, am I interpreting it wrong?
It's open for you to discuss.
Okay. Bigger is not always better. We are already straining our city infrastructure. We need more employees, more equipment, outdated equipment. Index is more expensive to the city. It is not controlling the city, you're adding growth to the city. You already have 80 miles of streets. And many of our city streets, they are in major repair. Some streets haven't been resurfaced for years. In 2005, I think, they reported that to the streets. We are behind in our city streets resurfacing. The state cut $75,000 this year. So that's going to cut us back, going to take us back further. At this time, my opinion, we do not need no more growth to the city at this present time. And I think we need to use good common sense. That's my opinion.
Any other council members? Very good. Adjournment then. If there's no objections, I will adopt a motion to adjourn.
Question? Is the...
I can't do that.
Okay.
Thank you. But if there's no objection, motion to adjourn is adopted by unanimous consent. Thank you.